Hey everyone, so I do want to talk about something here that I do find really, really interesting in terms of the whole, Rick Grimes's, I guess, arrival back to the Commonwealth and, whether or not certain characters know about it. Does Maggie know? Does Negan know? Because we're going into Dead City here in the next, 2 or 3 months, and obviously Dead City's timeline is set a few years into the future, right after the ones who live. And so you gotta wonder, do they know at all that Rick and Michonne made it back home? Because I feel like that is something that, it does make sense, but I think that there's a chance that obviously, it's not like everyone's going to be around the Commonwealth and everything all the time. Like when you focus on those two characters specifically, it's very possible that they just haven't really been around or have heard anything. So I do want to give some thoughts on this and talk about, are they going to actually bring this up in season 2? Because I feel like it's something that will be asked at some point here, during the promotion, all that is season 2, do these characters know that Rick and Michonne made it back, right? And I wonder if it's going to be something that Gimple just says, we'll eventually get to that, or this and that, right? So yeah, I want to talk about this. So before we go any further, make sure to be a subscriber if you do want to get all my Walking Dead content like this. And also definitely go follow me on Twitch. I will be streaming the Walking Dead games this week, starting with season 1. So yeah, I hope to see you guys there. It's going to be a lot of fun. I also wanted to mention one thing too. I just saw an interview. This was posted a couple of days ago, but it was with Stephen Ogg, and obviously he plays Simon on The Walking Dead, but he did an interview recently on a podcast where he talked about Andrew Lincoln. And that's one of the things that honestly is really incredible about Andrew Lincoln in general, and is something that for me personally, I've learned a lot just watching the show, is the way that he was on set, how welcoming he was to everybody. And it was something that, we've heard it so much, just from everybody, he really made the Walking Dead set absolutely incredible. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that because honestly, I watched that clip and it was I think more places need to be like that. Honestly, Andrew Lincoln was a really, really great leader for the Walking Dead, and still is, honestly, to this day. What he did back then is still very much alive, I would say, for the Walking Dead, to this day. But to get into what I wanted to talk about here, should Rick's arrival back to the Commonwealth or Alexandria, we don't know exactly where Rick and Michonne went, but is his return going to be mentioned at all in Dead City Season 2? Because Dead City Season 2, like I was saying, is set a few years after, so obviously they would know whether or not Rick and Michonne made it back, right? They would know. It's the same thing as, whatever happens to Daryl and Carol, Maggie and Negan are going to know, unless, the Daryl and Carol show obviously, keeps going for, it's going to go for a few more years, obviously. It's probably going to go to, season 5 or 6 or something, but, maybe one of those seasons, goes forward in time even more years or whatever, where it's past Dead City. I could totally see that happening. And so this way, maybe on Dead City, as of right now, Daryl and Carol still never made it back, which I think would be the smartest decision, honestly, because you don't want Dead City to be that show that just sort of spoils everything in terms of everyone reuniting, right? You don't want them to already know. That's something that would just be, I don't know, it would be underwhelming in my opinion. But that's the question that I do have for you though, is will Rick's arrival be mentioned, or should it be mentioned in season 2? Because the possibility of them knowing, it makes a lot of sense, right? And what's really interesting in terms of, I guess how people find out about things and whatnot on The Walking Dead is obviously it's not going to be it's not going to happen really unless you're a part of a community, finding out, about this or that. It's not going to be something that maybe you'll hear something from somebody who joins another community, right? That's sort of how people find out in general. And so for Maggie and Negan, when you look at the very last episode of The Walking Dead, Negan basically went his own way and he just kind of left. And that's what we learned in Dead City, was that he just left and he just kind of didn't keep in touch with anyone really. I think he stayed in a random place and eventually just sort of again, he didn't really make any sort of connections back home or anything like that. And the same thing with Maggie, though we don't know a lot about how she left the hilltop and went to the bricks. I think that's something I'm really interested in for season 2 is, just learning more information about just how she did that, because obviously we know the bricks is basically the hilltop, right? A lot of the resources, a lot of the, I guess people that were at the hilltop are now staying at the bricks, but obviously there's a lot more people there and everything. And I do wonder, how long after the finale did Maggie leave? Because the hilltop just never recovered from the Whisperer War. And so, I think it makes a lot of sense that, she probably left, I'm assuming right away. And there is a good chance that they don't even know that Rick and Michonne made it back, because it is something that I think you could easily explain there. They literally went and did their own thing for, however many years now, that it's very possible that they just haven't kept in touch with anyone from back home, right? And so the one thing that I will say though, and I think that's the part about this that I wonder about mostly, which is, the writer's point of view, or like Scott Gimple's point of view on this, right? Like, are the writers even gonna, bring this up in the show? Because I feel like if you do answer this, it could be something that is sort of underwhelming, because I mean, again, like the whole thing of them reuniting, I feel like for The Walking Dead right now is something that is really, really exciting, right? We want to know what that next big story is going to be. Daryl Dixon season 2 did set it up a little bit with, some of the stuff that Madame Janae mentioned about France and like the origin of walkers and whatnot. And, Laurent and Ash are now going back to the Commonwealth. So there's some like connections there. They're starting to like do some stuff here. I think for Dead City season 2, there's going to be a lot more. And I think for Daryl Dixon season 3, there's going to be a lot more as well. But I do think that mentioning specifically that Rick and Michonne made it back and that they're aware of that would probably hurt the overall reunion, because I think it's more exciting that they all don't know. And so I wonder if the writers and Gimple know that. And so maybe that's a reason why they'll just never really bring it up on the show. Like, it is something that is it almost makes no sense, but you just kind of have to think of it as like, it's not like everyone's going to find out right away anyways, especially because of their situation, right? Like, they left and they're pretty far away from the Commonwealth in Alexandria. So unless Maggie wants to keep in touch with everybody, she's not going to know. It makes sense for Negan to not know at all, because obviously he was basically like, no one really wanted him there, right? So he left, and yeah, obviously, why would he try and communicate with anyone back in Alexandria or the Commonwealth, right? Like, he just left. And so for Maggie, it makes a little bit more sense that she would try and talk to people back home. But it's one of those things that when you look at when she left, I guess after, like when she left during the time period there after All Out War, she didn't really talk to anybody for a very long time. Like, she was just gone trying to help out other communities, right? So it almost makes sense that she's basically doing the same thing again. And that's why she's likely not gonna, try to see what's going on with people, this and that, because it's sort of what she did before. And then eventually she returned because she needed help, obviously, like dealing with the Reapers and everything. So I think that it is very possible that at this point here in Dead City, they don't even know. But I do think that confirming that, I think is important. I think that that's something that maybe Gimple should say in like interviews and all that, because they're going to be promoting the show right away. Like, they have to be, right? Like a month from now, I imagine we're going to be talking about like the release date already, some new footage that we got. I think there's going to be more interviews out and stuff, because again, I do think this show's for sure coming out in May. Like, it can't be pushed off until June. I know June is technically like the spring, but I just think based off of the release date of Dark Winds and whatnot, it just makes sense for it to come out like very, very early May. But I just did a video on this anyways, talking about a lot of this because of Dead City's like the first season release coming on Netflix next month. I think it makes sense that we're probably going to get a trailer or a release date teaser, this and that next month to announce all of that, so we know, when the show's coming out and everything, so we have all that clarity, because right now it's just sort of like, what's going on, right? And so, yeah, I just really wanted to talk about this because I do find it really interesting. Like, it makes sense, obviously, for Daryl and Carol to not really know. I mean, that was a question throughout season 2. Does Carol know? And I think some people still wonder if Carol knows, right? But now with Maggie and Negan, it's kind of the same thing. Do they know about Rick and Michonne, right? Like, that they came back home and everything. I really feel like they don't. Like, honestly, I do think that they most likely don't at all, which maybe doesn't really make too much sense. But I honestly, the one thing I'll just say is you just look back at like season 10, 11 around there, or not even then, like go back to like, Rick's final episode in The Walking Dead. Like, that last episode, Maggie was there, but she was gone for a long time. They did a 6-year time jump. She left probably a year or two after that, I would say. And she was gone for a couple of years and didn't really talk to anybody at all. So now, it's a couple of years after, The Walking Dead's final episode. I think it still makes sense to me. Like, yeah, Maggie just wouldn't really communicate with anyone, So I think that this is probably going to be the answer that we do get, if they're ever asked that. I really do hope that Gimple is actually asked this, like at Comic-Con this summer. Actually, I guess that'd be a little bit too late because that'll be after Dead City's over. So like in the next couple months here during the promotion of Dead City, because I feel like it's going to be really interesting in terms of how they promote Dead City, because I can just see a lot of the questions. Like, obviously, they're going to be asking a lot about the show, but there's going to be questions about, how this fits in with like the other shows and whatnot, and how Rick and Michonne being so close to them, or kind of close anyways, obviously closer than Daryl and Carol are, like how it makes sense in terms of the timeline and all that, because there hasn't been a lot of mention of that, right? Like when Dead City first came out, we never watched The Ones Who Live. So we were all wondering certain things back then, but we still had to watch The Ones Who Live. Now that we know how it ends, like this is the first time, getting into Maggie and Negan's story, where it's like, all right, so how does that ending fit into this current story now? And so yeah, I'm interested in seeing how Gimple is going to address a lot of that, because every time the show comes out, there's a lot of talk about reuniting and everything. And so those questions will come up again. There's going to be questions about spinoffs and a lot of that. And yeah, I'm just really excited for The Walking Dead to come back. I really just can't wait. And I'll probably have to do a video on this, but I did do a poll actually on Twitter, or I guess X, about, you know, would you like to see Herschel become a villain? And as of right now, it seems like 60% of people are saying no. So that's really interesting. You know, it's a little bit closer, I guess. It's like 60-40. So I noticed the 60% has been dropping a little bit, you know, so I can see it going to like 50 something or whatever. It seems like more people don't want him to become a villain, but honestly, it depends on how they do it. I personally would love to see him become a villain, but yeah, we'll have to wait and see though. But yeah, I'm going to leave it here. Definitely post all your thoughts down below. Do you think they're going to mention the fact that Rick's actually alive and that he made it back to the Commonwealth in Dead City Season 2? Post your thoughts down below. Hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.